Today's episode of Poets at War is sponsored by the following.
I'm Ian Wilson, and I create graphic art using primarily traditional methods, supplementing with digital where it's needed. I use a real pen, a real paper, a real graphite to make my art. I like to feel my art. I've always been this way. I love the feeling of a pen or pencil in my hand, the sound of graphite scratching paper, and I love the sight of a nice black line making its way across the page. So why choose traditional art over digital? Traditional art has an organic, natural quality that seems to be missing from most digital illustrations. The illustrated books and comics that were made in the days before digital have an excellence and staying power that is just as vibrant now as it was decades ago. These are the stories that stay with you. Dr. Seuss, Winnie the Pooh, Where the Wild Things Are. People still read these. I'm currently working on my own graphic novel series, Legend of the Swordbearer, and I've also had the privilege to draw graphics for 2 motion comic series, along with illustrations for a small magazine, Logosophia magazine, and various book covers. Don't let traditional art fade into the dust. Help me keep it alive. You won't regret it. Visit my website at ianthomaswilson.com for more info.
This time on Poets at War, we talk with the Brood's own Darth Tater, Michael Bush, about his aspiring authorship and dark humor, along with many other things. It's time to go. This is Poets at War!
I'm a potato.
And of course, he's going to have an amazing audio setup because he's Phil Lawler, but
Well, I mean, he also has that really deep voice, so
which has only deepened over the years, as you do when you get older. I'm like, I'm talking to Dale Jacobs. This is so weird. But yeah, so how you been, man?
I've been doing pretty good. Getting ready for a busy time at work. You know, I work as an accountant, and so we got the start of the next month. And the company and one of our subsidiaries wants the accounting stuff to end a day early, so I'm probably going to work this Saturday, which is always exciting.
Yeah, I hear that. Well, thank you. I wanted to say thank you in person for the gift that you gave us a little bit ago. That really, really helped, and helped my mom out too, which is even bigger than helping us out. You know what I'm saying? So I really appreciate
glad to do
that.
it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but yeah, so I don't know, man. I have not been able to keep up with a lot of your stuff because you haven't been posting as much of your stuff. So this is going to be kind of interesting, kind of fishing through what you've been up to.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of drifted away from a lot of posting stuff because like it got to this point where you're posting things and like you're trying to have these original thoughts, but someone else has already said it better than you know? And so you might as well just leave that for the people to read and throwing your voice out there. At some point in time, it's better to be quiet, you know, let other people find it. That's kind of where I was for a while.
Right. And kind of getting to more of the self-expression for yourself kind of thing, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think I'm opening back up right now to do more of the creative expression, more of the writing. I have a web serial that I'm going to bring out, I think, over the next few months, starting with. So we'll see how well that works out.
Yeah, well, make sure to avail yourself of all the random meme groups to post in and the Brood and everything else.
Of course.
I'm looking forward to that. Well, for those of the people who don't know Michael Bush, which if you don't, you either aren't a part of the Brood or have been living under a rock and most reformed and away from all the Reformed Presbyterian and Baptist groups for the past 5-6 years, maybe a little more, right? You were a meme for a while in some of those groups. Michael Bush is a potato.
I was the I'm a potato meme, and it got started because in the Reformed pub, there was a time when Facebook introduced polls, but nobody knew how to turn off the ability to let people add stuff. So I would just add I'm a potato for some reason, and it became a meme. It was great.
What's funny is now it's a TikTok sound and there's no actual connection. You know what I'm talking about or no?
I don't do TikTok.
Oh, okay. I mean, it's not just TikTok. It's on all the shorts platforms and whatever. But there's this little kid who got was playing with filters one day, or his mom was playing with filters with him, and one of them was a potato with like the annoying orange style eyes and mouth and everything. And he goes, "I'm a potato." So every time I hear it, I'm like, "Oh, look, it's Michael." But yeah, so like I know that you're Reformed. I'd love to hear a little bit of the background on that. Well, you've been in the Reformed groups, and generally speaking, you've been Reformed in the way you've argued and other things. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so my background is I grew up in a Christian home. I'm the oldest of 5 kids. Kind of had an interesting experience because when I was
I'm the oldest of 5.
Yeah, cool. Kind of had an interesting experience because growing up, my father shifted more towards the Reformed and kind of brought a lot of the family with him as that happened. And so I being the oldest, kind of got to see Dad a little more close than other people. I know he read a lot of R.C. Sproul in those years, and that's kind of how I came to where I am. Also, Wayne Grudem's Systematic Theology was real big at that time, and so we both read that. Nice big book. I always felt like people should be very impressed with me because I was like 12 or 13 when I was reading it. Not the best motivation to read a big theology book, but hey, it's something.
Right, totally. And yeah. I mean, it pays off whether your intentions were pure or not. You have some knowledge to fall back on and that kind of a thing. But so what was that? Your teen years? He was starting to come around to. Yeah,
that was kind of my teen years. And so then, I was homeschooled, and so being homeschooled, I had the opportunity to do a lot of independent studying, and that's kind of a thing I've kept up for most of my life. Is I'm always studying some topic or other, or I try to be. Recently, for instance, I was trying to study the effects of British colonialism in India on the economy of India and that's obviously a very complicated topic. It's going to take a lot of reading to get through, but it's endlessly fascinating. I'm always impressed by how big and deep and wide the world is and history is. There's always so much more to learn. Every little bit you learn it adds this little clarity. Part of the world falls in a little bit bigger perspective. It's phenomenal.
Yeah, I hear that, and it's one of those things I've found. I have friends who get really into, we had a little thing in the Brood over Narnia and Lord of the Rings in the comparison, and you're more of a Rings guy, I'm more of a Narnia guy. Yeah. But we both like there's things we like about both. I think I'm more of a both, and you're more of a Rings exclusive sort of kind of guy from what I heard. But I find that the mathematical type brain, being an accountant and that sort of thing, even though you are creative, you have a more mechanical sort of thing, tends toward Lord of the Rings for all the amazing mechanics and everything else that it holds. And then there's the more romantic, sort of I don't even know what to call it. It's like themes and the ethereal sort of thing. That tends to be the people who are more like, I'm going to just draw something, and they begin and don't know where they're going, that kind of thing. So I did you listen to Darren Doan at all?
To who?
Darren Doan, Doancast, and he's part of that whole,
Sorry.
Okay, he's part of the whole Moscow group and everything up there, but he's a filmmaker and did Blink 182 videos back in the day, became a Christian, and he's made a bunch of movies and other random things, but he's a filmmaker up there. And he was talking about, putting Tolkien and Lewis up and looking at them. And he says, so many people critique it from this level or this level. For me, he didn't exactly say this 100%, but he said the one level that I never hear anyone talk about is the entire body of Lewis's work and the entire body of Tolkien's work, and he knows tons of scumbags who are right on their highway to hell who love Tolkien, but he has never met someone like that who loves Lewis.
That's fair. That's fair. I think Lewis's can be very hard to love if you read them all the way through and are really sold out to the highway to hell stuff.
Right.
I remember a few years ago, this kind of something that had kind of an influence on me. I was reading a random blog post, honestly, by an atheist blogger. I used to read a lot of atheist bloggers because I hate myself. And he told the story of how he read through the whole Narnia series without realizing it was a Christian series until he came to the last battle, and then he threw the last battle across the room once he realized what he'd been reading the whole time. And I feel like maybe not that extreme reaction, but I think it's very often something I see in some of a more secular perspective. It comes into Narnia.
Yeah, you can't read Narnia and not at least be interacting with a Christian worldview. You know what I mean? It's a little more, and that's not just being a little more on the nose. That's also just being, a little bit more, having a little bit more of an agenda, And C.S. Lewis always had an agenda with whatever he was doing, but it was always, what's the word? It's not just jovial, but he had an amicable way of going about his his agendas. He was always trying to do something for you for the best, whether he was right or not.
Yeah.
So,
well,
but go ahead.
I mean, that's a really active struggle for me about writing, is like, how much is the ideal amount of, I mean, do you really lean into, as a Christian, to the Christian ideals the way Lewis did, or are you more subtle about, like Tolkien, what works, what's the best choice, what makes the best story?
And Tolkien wasn't always, I mean, you can't read Tom Bombadil in any way without kind of getting, wait a second, this has to be some kind of Christian allegory a little bit in some sort of way. You know what I mean? There's moments in the Lord of the Rings where you're like, okay, yeah, definitely. But overall, it's less worked into the overall themes, like Lewis. So but so for those who haven't, I've read a little bit of your stuff because you asked for beta readers a while ago, and it's been a long time, honestly, since I read a lot of that. But just give people an idea of what you're wanting to accomplish with your writing, whether it's for you or for other people or whatever else. Like you said, you're doing a web serial soon. What's your style? Introduce us.
So I love mixing science fiction and fantasy. In some ways, my first speculative fiction love is comics. And if you read the DC or the Marvel comics, 1 month Spider-Man can be fighting a wizard, and the next month he can be fighting aliens from outer space, and it completely works despite the very disparate genres that are there. And I've always loved that element. That's something I bring into a lot of my storytelling. The other thing that I enjoy is I like going back and forth between like ridiculous, almost humorous deconstruction of things and more hopeful humor. I enjoy finding things that people love about stories and then doing that thing but making it terrible, and then finding a way to take that one after you've made it horrifying to read and making it hopeful again. That kind of ties right into your humor in the Brood. I'm noticing all the time, not just in the Brood, but knowing you for a couple of years now through the internet and whatever else. You really love your dark humor. You really love to dive right into something that's very bizarre and strange and whatever else, and just present it as normal, moving along. And that's something I've always admired about you. I love exquisitely dark humor. I don't have a dark bone in my body, honestly. I can only repost the dark stuff. I can't come up with it. But you've had some really good ones over the years. I do my best. I mean, in some ways, when I do that, I do it because because in my own mind, there's often these very dark kind of thoughts, but often they're very implicit. They're not well drawn out. And sometimes the act of speaking them makes them sound ridiculous.
Yes.
Like it's very easy to think to yourself, oh, I'm worthless, I'm hopeless, I'm a failure, everything. But suddenly when you say those words out loud, suddenly you sound like an idiot. Like,
it's the whistling in the graveyard kind of thing, right?
So dark humor to me is when you speak these things, you remove some of their power. Like the thought comes said out loud. It's no longer this threatening, vague thing. It's there. It's out in the open. Of course, I found over the years that not everybody treats it that way. For some people, speaking out in the open makes it worse. And I found it's just best to avoid those people, honestly.
I hear you. And I've had moments of this in my own life, running from, like a sexual temptation or something. I'll quote like something from Family Matters, like "you hussy" or something ridiculous like that. This is the kind of humor that, like I was saying, just kind of whistling through the graveyard, kind of thing. It's bad, it's evil, dark, scary world. And if you can laugh at it, like Tom Bombadil mentioned earlier, it removes a lot of that power. So yeah, I'm right there with you. So in that regard, what is some of your inspiration for that kind of a thing? What brought you into trying to accomplish that? Because like Lewis brought me into a lot of things, Tolkien brought me into a lot of things, and the rhyme was really punctuated the epic poetry and stuff, honestly, from Disney and some of Broadway's stuff, and also just like various forms of music where they were storytelling songs, right? And I wanted to make something longer that would last, that I could listen to for a long time. So what brought that dark humor and trying to flip it into something more hopeful to you? Like what inspired you to do that?
I think in a lot of ways it's been my okay, well, let's put too fine a point on it, but Tumblr.
There you go.
In good conscience recommend that to anybody necessarily, but I find there are certain places on the internet where a feeling or a mood of darkness gets brought into the discourse, and it kind of lies there, and people and it influences people in these weird ways that are always kind of implicit. And so my goal was kind of to speak to some of those situations, because I'm a child of the internet age. I want to speak into this culture that is online. And in some ways, that's what I know. So I have to find a way to take this kind of nihilism that kind of gets coded all over everything and places in our society, and you find a way to take that and make something better from the raw material. Because as a Christian writer, I realized very early on that no one is going to listen to you if you're being too explicitly Christian. You have to find a way to come into people's presuppositions. You have to find a way to slip past their defenses, and I think the dark humor can work that, because hopefully someone reads this and they think, oh, I've thought those things too. But also, here's a way of thinking that's not that anymore. Here's a way of thinking that's not just alien to that form, but is different enough that maybe you can start them looking at something better.
Yeah, I love that. So Tumblr became, in many ways, either not necessarily directly, but your heart bled for some of the people that you saw there. It was a mission field. It was like, yeah, look at this place. It's ridiculous. One of the things you said, child of the internet age, I have to know if it's something you've encountered or not. If it's not, we'll just stop at that dead end and find another one. But Homestar Runner.
I am familiar a little bit with it. I have avoided it, honestly.
I think you'd really like it, honestly. It's ridiculous.
I probably would.
It's pretty clean, honestly.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've there's a few classic internet things like that, like Homestar Runner, Red versus Blue, like just classic internet stuff that I have not gone into because I'm it just never struck me as like I don't want to go in that rabbit hole.
Right. I describe Homestar Runner is if Looney Tunes had none of the slapstick, but all of the attitude and maybe like 3/4 the vocabulary. So it's a goofy little thing. The worst you'll hear on it is like crap. Like there's no, like horrible words. Sorry to all the homeschool moms listening, right? Oh no. But yeah, so
years from now you're gonna be canceled for that comment.
I know, right? But yeah, so going back to that kind of era, I find homeschool people, and I think this is sort of the way I could say, I mean, different family cultures, but my family is extremely referential in the way that they do humor, and I find that's very common amongst homeschool families. And the more obscure the quote, as long as it's actually stuck in someone else's brain, the funnier and better it is. Is Adventures in Odyssey one of those things that you'll quote, all that sort of thing? And what are some homeschooled connections and things to your humor that an internet age? And so I'm trying to get a vibe and an aesthetic here.
Goodness gracious. My family, I would listen to Adventure in Odyssey by myself and my family. So that was never a
oh man.
that never became a source of memes among us. We have a lot of It's a Wonderful Life memes in my family.
That's great.
Because we used to watch that movie a whole lot. And then a lot of it is just quotes that people in our family said at different points that were ridiculous. Because all 5 of us kids, we were crazy sometimes. Like, and we would oftentimes make these just completely ridiculous accusations about against our siblings for different things. Like, there's a famous incident where one of my brothers tripped over something and then yelled at my sister for it. She was not even there. She wasn't even close. And so that became a bit of a meme in our family, and just other stuff like that.
That's awesome. So homeschooling, it was something very unique to me growing up, and it's something I'm very appreciative of because my aunt, who recently passed away, was like the pioneer in the Southeast region in the late 80s, early 90s. She ran the Southeast Homeschool Expo, which was a huge convention. It was the biggest one in the region for many years. She also ran just because she needed some good clothes and whatever else, and knew plenty of other people who did. She'd run an annual like consignment sale that was I'm talking like probably 500 people showed up to, whatever. She was just a really amazing person. And my mom, who's her sister, also did stuff. And they had another sister who lived with her that also did stuff. And it was just something crazy growing up in that, because like I would work as a security guard for the convention at 13 or whatever, and get paid for it. And there were just all these kind of things and adventures that we would have around that. And I find, even though I was unique in that regard and my cousins were unique and all that, every homeschool family kind of has their own, like, we had these adventures and they're completely different than anything anyone else had. What were some of those unique adventures for you and your family?
Goodness, let's see here. A lot of my kind of adventuring memories come from my time in the Boy Scouts, and a lot of this stuff with my dad on trips. We were on a few trips where the wind would be blowing really hard, and the tent would actually be blown level right across our faces, and we'd have to like kind of spread ourselves out but hold it in place a little bit. There's a really neat one where we were hiking in Wyoming, and one of the guys in our group jumped off a rock and kind of sprained his knee, and And so we're like, well, the thing you're supposed to do in this situation is put ice on the knee. Well, none of us has seen ice in a week. So, but then that same evening there was a hailstorm, and so we were able to, in Providence, put ice right on his knee like that.
That's awesome. That is crazy cool. Great. I'm sure it wasn't great while it was hailing, but
that's one of the interesting things about camping is like storms. They're kind of scary when they're big, but they're also like the most spectacular memories. And I remember mostly being excited by seeing the hail come down like inside the tent. Like, yeah, okay, there's some danger here, but it's not so much that I can't appreciate being out in the wilderness at the mercy of the storm. You know, that sublime sense of awe that it produces, being in the presence of something like that.
Yeah. I have the distinct pleasure of being providentially placed twice in my life to see a lightning bolt cross a rainbow.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, I've actually seen that twice in my life, which is crazy. But each time I just had to sing. Like there's no two ways about it. I had to stop what I was doing and sing something, even if it was just doxology. I don't remember what I sang. You know, just something very simple like that. It's just there's danger and there's beauty and there's majesty all together, and that's just an amazing thing. So, what you know, I don't know if the part at the beginning is going to be in the episode or not, where you said you're an accountant. It's tax season. Yeah. How do you obviously you have a sense of wonder. You're not just a little drone, you know. You have a sense of humor about drudgery situations and whatever else, and can get through all those sorts of things. What is does your writing help you in some ways, like get through just regular everyday life, the 9 to 5, the grind, whatever? Or do you have a completely different take on what the 9 to 5 grind even is?
I mean, to me, the 9 to 5 grind is what I do to make money so I can go home and do the fun stuff.
Right.
In a lot of ways. So, and honestly, when I'm really busy at work, I'm usually not writing much at all. If I am, it's like one sentence after I get home at 10 o'clock at night. And, but you know, if you think about how you keep a sense of wonder, I think a big way is you just try to open your mind to what's beautiful out there, and you try to look at situations in ways that are merciful to people. You try to look at the world in ways that see its beauty. You know, I like to go on walks out in nature, you know, every day when I can, and I like to, when I'm there, I like to try and look at, you know, whether it's a little like dandelion weed growing by the sidewalk, or this little insect going by. I try to make myself focus on those things and like not just walk past them, but recognize that there's something beautiful and good there. And then once you do that, you begin to realize that it's all around you. It's in every nick and corner of the world that you're in. And once you do that, I think you're most of the way to keeping that sense of wonder and keeping your sanity, really.
Right. Yeah. And I'm sure your dark sense of humor, I guess the Office style, when you're at the office, you know, you can make fun of those situations and just think to yourself, there's, you know, probably like sometimes you can tell with the weather, there's probably a rainbow outside, and that's a million times more significant and interesting than what's happening here. And yet what's happening here is not insignificant, you know?
Yeah.
That's one of the big things my wife is always on me about, is trying to put, and this is something she's really helped me with over the years, because I used to be not on purpose, but sort of elitist about like people who open up to creativity and people who feel uncomfortable with that and don't go any further into it. And she's like, not only does God make all kinds of people for different purposes, but someone who may not be uncomfortable with being creative is creative, whether they like it or not. They have a level of creativity that is within them, and your job should be helping them feel comfortable
with their creativity, even if they never really use it. Just make them feel comfortable, and that's a hospitality thing that she's really helped me with. And so, but yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things that I've noticed about a lot of online discourse is, especially on social media, you'll find people who have just the most interesting takes on things out there. Just random people who you wouldn't think are like, oh, that person's a really smart guy or anything. They'll just have them. People will put them out there. And to me, it makes me wonder. It makes me think that, I think everybody has this insightful part of themselves that comes out. And it's really only the people who are able to express in writing that we ever hear. How much of that insight are we missing because of people who aren't well versed in creativity? And
right.
Yeah.
Right.
And you can look at it two ways. You can look at that as, oh, it's depressing, we lose all that. But you can also look at it as, here are these visions of beauty that are out there, even if we don't see them.
Also, thank you, God, for saving me from the anti-beauty, the nihilism that certain other uncreative people aren't sharing. Because
very true.
We need less of that in today's world. That's for sure. Yes. But yeah. So, what are your plans for this web serial? Do you have a whole lot of plans yet? Can you divulge anything? Tease us with anything?
Yeah. So it's a web serial about a single mother turned into a monster from Egyptian mythology, a Nazi hunting wizard, a blind assassin, a winged bird girl, and a pacifist monk possessed by a Lovecraftian monster who go on who unite as a team in order to save the multiverse from the embodiment of depression. So
I love it. That sounds great.
So the plan is to release it in seasons, television style. It's to have a number of either short stories or maybe novella length, kind of covering it, kind of documenting it, and then however many seasons that takes to kind of finish it. And I have a general plan for where we'll go and after, but don't have it mapped out in excruciating detail. The working title for this is The Coterie of Lonely Hearts.
And make sure you, if you're interested, audio work here, free. And if you want some help with website or whatever else you want to do with it, just let me know. And I would love to join in and help. That sounds amazing.
Well, I appreciate that. I hope it is amazing. It'll be my first time putting something out there really for the public. I've written several novels in my life, never really put them out there in a public way, because every time you finish one, you're like, well, that was okay, but that next one can be better. And why do you want to put something out there if it's not your best work, Right.
Yeah. I worked for probably from age 13 to probably about 19 or 20 before I really felt comfortable. Even though I put some stuff out, and you can still find it if you look hard enough. The fact is, like, when I really hit my stride was Cyclone Jones, which I think you've read or of. And so that's some of my. It's so funny. I think most people, and a lot of people don't talk about this. For me, and I've heard other people say the same sort of thing. There's really like your first great work where no matter how many times you go back to it, and you might, if you're away from it long enough, think, whatever, I did that a long time ago. But if you actually go back and read it or listen to it or look at it or whatever it is, you fall in love with it all over again. You're like, this was exactly how I felt. Like, you remember how you felt at the time writing it. You remember how all these things just clicked and fell into place, and you just love it all over again. And that's definitely Cyclone Jones for me. So
yeah, that's definitely a good point. I think a lot of aspiring writers out there feel almost too much of a need to get their stories out in the public. I think that something like what you said. I mean, that story is meaningful to you because of where you were and what it meant for you, even if no one else reads it. And
right.
And for that reason, it was important for you to write it at the time when you did.
Yep. And I've heard, and that's one that I had confirmation from a lot of other people on too. So it was one where I could look at it and say, this was a turning point, you know. Stuff before that, I don't really, that's the thing. I almost never gave up on any stories. There's like one or two here or there, but I always just tweaked it and changed it until I was happy with it. And some people say you should never ever do that. As a writer, you should be able to drop it and move on to the next idea and whatever else. And to a certain extent, that's the case, but I'm a weird one. I write in epic poetry. I have a whole different set of rules, you know, that just, it changes everything. You know, when you actually write in poems of, you know, 3 to 5 minute length, like a song, you know, it's a whole different ball game, you know. So I don't know, where do you want to take the conversation from here? Because those are most of the things I wanted to cover, but we still got plenty of time.
Oh, very interesting. Very interesting. So okay, this something I've always wondered is why epic poetry? Because I feel like it's a form that it'll always has been dead for like 500 years, honestly.
Right. Yeah.
Why epic poetry for you?
Well, okay, so like I was saying a little bit earlier, Disney and Broadway and Hamilton always and things like that, they always kind of just woke something up in me. There's something about how you can compress a theme and an aesthetic and these sorts of things with just not just the meanings of words, although when you stack meanings in rhyme, they kind of hit differently, but also like just the sounds that certain words make give a certain feeling. And I found that I could evoke more emotion in myself if I wrote it in poetry. And then the second thing is I'm dyslexic. I don't see things backwards. I have this form. It may not even technically be dyslexia, but it's what my aunt called it. And she actually worked with lots of special needs people and whatever else. I have to translate text into audio in order to understand it. So my imagination has to hear a voice in my head reading the text. I'm that phonetic. And so because of that, and because of astigmatism, which wasn't diagnosed till my late teens, I got headaches very quickly reading, and especially prose. Poetry always flowed a lot easier, not just because the words were less dense, but also because they were rhythmic and I knew what they'd sound like. It sped up the translation process for me. And so like this was all for me, but then when I started writing it and sharing it, I got a lot of positive feedback. I actually wrote Cyclone Jones initially as a hip-hop album, and you can still find it. I performed it, you know, whatever. But it's that went well, but I've gotten to the point where I'm not as interested in the music, and even though I like music, and I'm not as interested in some of the other stuff. So it just kind of flows. But as far as marketability, I find if someone hears it and hears the story, and I lock eyes with them, and I do my voices, and I do everything else that I do, it clicks. It's something primal inside of people that you don't forget over generations, you know? So I want to bring it back, but you know, that's a whole other thing. But yeah, you were going to say something.
No, I'm just saying definitely bring it back. Revive the form.
Yeah. This is one of those things, like I've written songs about this. I've written other poems about it. Like, and I think that I think any author, any writer, any storyteller who has it isn't just trying to regurgitate what they've done. They have this one thing that hits them, and they know that it can hit other people, and they want to share that. You know, you with the dark comedy turned to light, right? And me with the sound. Really, it is the sound of storytelling. I think that's the thing that's missing for me, because when I read something, it's sheet music for someone who can't read sheet music, right? And I have to put the melody to it in order to appreciate it. So I don't know, man. Like, I know that's your thing. I'm trying to find people who have that thing for the Brood, for friends, for you know. Do you have anyone that you've known over the years who fits into that category of they have that thing that they want to share in their work?
I've known a few people, honestly. Well, like you, I strive to collect creative, inclined friends.
We're people collectors. Like, that's just the way we are.
Yeah. So I have had a few. I've got some good buddies who are also invested in the writing thing to various degrees. And I mean, to me, I think it's essential. You have to have other people with you, like speaking into your work, and as you speaking to them. I personally, I would love to be able to get to do the Inklings thing, where you do the weekly meetup and talk about some books. Unfortunately, with our various jobs and lives, it's not something that was worked out yet. But long-term goals, I think.
Well, that's helped with the Brood, even though it's not a meeting, so to speak. We're able to really share with each other. We're able to kind of, you know, and that's kind of what I wanted from the start of when we changed the name to Brood of Writers, which was totally your suggestion. I thought that was a hilarious joke. It's Wonder Brood now, but it's always just the Brood. It's always been just the Brood, whether it was the Brood of Writers, Wonder Brood, whatever. And to me, I wish people would, you know, I know some people get tired of voice messages at times, you know, because they're working, they're doing, you know, whatever, and they have to catch up later. But I wish people would do, and I know they keep changing it, whether you can do longer than 15-second or 30-second videos and whatever else. But I wish we could just, you know, upload an unlisted YouTube video and link it and say, here's my story, read it out loud, say, what do you guys think? And get feedback, you know, and have sort of a impromptu Inkling meeting all the time, you know.
Definitely something to aspire to. I mean, for me, the problem has always been that, like, whenever my work is done, I'm like, I see the problems here, and I need to fix these problems first. Oh, but this other project is so much more interesting. Editing for me, revising for me is the nightmare of all this. And that's honestly one reason that I'm attracted to the web serial format, is because, not to put too fine a point on it, but the bar is lower.
Yes, and you can work in smaller chunks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and people are more tolerant of like long, winding stories. Like the most popular web serials are like over 1 million words, which is just crazy. But people tolerate it because in that format, it's acceptable, I guess.
Yeah, because you're getting smaller chunks at a time. You know, Sarah Levesque in the Brood, the doctor, she regularly will, in her spare time, edit for people in the Brood. I'm not putting words in her mouth, but if you want some help, just getting some red lines over some stuff and advice, she's really, really good at that kind of thing. And she eats it up. Like I have a mother-in-law who does our taxes, who she loves taxes. She's weird. She just loves it. She loves doing taxes. She gets excited about what refunds people are going to get and whatever else. And so everyone in our extended family just says, here, you can have them. She's like, yay! Even if she doesn't ever get, like, she gets stuff back. We give her stuff back. But even if it's never much, she's just happy to do it. And I have found Sarah has been that way too for me, you know. and that's what I try to be with everybody too, with my voice work and the other things that I'm able to do. And I have found over the years that when you are as giving as you possibly can be, other people appreciate that and want to reciprocate, so share your stuff, man. The Brood's there. We're not going to post it for you unless we have to, like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien, right? You know about that?
I heard a fascinating anecdote about C.S. Lewis and Tolkien the other day. Apparently, prior to Lewis's 12 years or so where he published almost all his work, he and Tolkien decided they were going to basically try and be for their decade what MacDonald and Chesterton had been in the previous decade of like the premier Christian writers at that time. And what you end up with is C.S. Lewis published like his 12 or 15 books, and Tolkien published none. So,
right.
Spent 20 years working on Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. And it's so funny. Like, a lot of people don't read Tolkien's nonfiction or his short stories. And you think that this was all he spent his time on. And it's by far the majority. Like, Lewis jumped around like a crazy person. Yeah. But like, Tolkien's nonfiction is really good. I wish he wrote more of it, honestly, but he didn't find it as interesting, and I can sympathize. This is my nonfiction work right here. This will be typed up and put in a book someday. You know what I'm saying? All these interviews.
This is what you're doing for posterity.
Pieces. Right, exactly. And to me, nonfiction is all about posterity and generally putting out your message to the world in the straightforward, preachy sort of way, so that you can then take and do your thematic, beautiful stuff as an artist, Yeah. It's SEO.
Yeah. Very nice. Very nice. Yeah. I don't know, man. We live in an age of so much nonfiction, personal stuff being put out there. So many voices speaking more than now than ever before. And in some ways, that's great. In other ways, it means, projects like this, I'm sure you have to wonder, like, is anyone ever going to listen to it? And obviously, you've got the Brood, for there. You've got, you've got a small audience. It maybe doesn't have to go beyond it. Maybe it's just us, the 10 or 15 people there. But I also think that if you're creative, at least on some level, you probably want your stuff to be seen by other people.
And it's not even necessarily for money, even though we want to make money as a family. The fact is, like, for me, it is bringing back epic poetry. It's leaning people into the older and yet somehow not, how should I put this? It is both ancient and completely new at the same time. The idea of sitting around a fire and listening to someone bring you into another world. We really are portals to each other's minds, and our minds are as infinitely creative as the creator in some ways. Like, we can really think of anything within creation itself, which is just mind-boggling. And change it and mold it and remix it. And, like, the sub-creation side of everything is just, I want to bring people into that. I want them to bring them into imagination itself, and that's more my goal than anything, which is why we've gone not any sort of tax exempt, but full ministry mode right now. Like, I took down my the link to my support page on my website. The support page is still there, and I still mention it in some of my podcasts. But like, this is what I want to do. I want to talk with somebody and then have a relationship with them, and when trouble comes, they're there to help me. You know what I mean? Like, I have found that so much more valuable. And so I'm trying to find more ways to dive into that hospitality. Casey and I, our dream and goal one day is to buy a really old house out in the middle of nowhere and turn it into a fairy tale bed and breakfast.
Oh my!
Where we can actually like tell stories and, have whole little crowds and that sort of a thing, and even have a theme to whatever weekend they're staying, that kind of a thing, and make it a destination for people to experience real, personal, human to human hospitality. So, but yeah. So where are you headed with everything? I don't know.
Where am I? Good question. I mean, for the time being, I am just living my life and trying to do the creative stuff when I can. I mean, who knows what the web serial will do? Who knows if it'll even work out? Maybe it'll peter out halfway through. I mean, most of them do, for being honest.
Yeah. But that's okay.
Who knows anything will come of it? I mean, obviously, I'd love for that to be a springboard into some bigger career things with writing. But I think if you're a writer, you have to kind of hold your two things at once in your head. At one point, you have to say like, what I'm writing will never be read by anybody, because you can't try to psych yourself with that way. You can't prime yourself for failure by telling yourself it's going to be successful. At the same time, you have to think that everybody should be reading. You have to think that's good enough that people ought to.
Right.
And so you kind of have to learn to tell yourself two things at once there.
Yeah.
I mean, as for me, I want to find a way to that makes the world a better place than it was when I got here, I suppose. I mean, in whatever small way that I can. I think the past couple of years have shown all of us that how powerless we really are in the face of larger forces, not just cultural forces, but natural phenomena and the decisions of, presidents and kings. But
at the same time, we're still here.
Yeah, but at the same time, we're still here. And there's a little space around each of us where we have the power to do something better. And I would like to think that that I'm going to have a legacy like that, at least a small one,
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read the Wingfeather Saga by Andrew Peterson?
I've read the first 3 books. I need to read the last book.
Yes, you do. Oh my goodness. That the only thing close, and I'm not comparing the two because I have no clue what it was when I first heard it versus, when I first heard Wingfeather. But the only book that has ever made me cry like that is The Last Battle.
Interesting.
So the Last Battle and The Warden and the Wolf King are
the
most like make me a mess of any books. But so the first one, they have Armulin the Bard. You remember Armulin? And he goes up and there's the whole thing with the mayor bowing to the fangs. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yeah. And then he says, "Fangs are ugly." My best Rich Mullins impersonation, because that's what Armulin is. Armulin. Rich Mullins.
I did not catch that at all.
Yeah. Well, if you look at the drawings of him, whether I think they have him in the book, the new book, but I don't have that one. But there are drawings of him, and it's very clearly, obviously Rich Mullins. So, but and he's barefoot and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. So, but fangs are ugly. That's what I do. Like I'm the little bard guy over in the corner writing epic poetry saying fangs are ugly. And I'm perfectly happy to do that because I know that beauty is beyond me. My work is beyond me. I don't have to worry about how specifically let me put it this way. It's my job as the gardener to make and grow the best carrots poems that I possibly can. But it's not my job to grow the carrots. You know what I'm saying? And so basically, like, that's kind of how I deal with that thing you were talking about, where you kind of have to psych yourself up on one end and, work on it and say it's horrible on the other. Like, to me, I'm just trying to grow the thing. And if I can grow the thing and make it the best darn thing that it is, like, that's how I deal with it. I'm just this little bard over here in the corner of the internet trying to revive, as you put it, even rightly so, a dead artwork. Like, the closest thing we have to it now is the sort of the beatnik verse novels that exist and are being written in Portland. There's just nothing like this in the conservative camps. And so I have to fight on one end with the conservatives who are, the angry conservatives. And then on the other side, I have to fight, the crazy people. And I can say rightly so on both sides, fangs are ugly. and just do my own little thing. And I have found I am happiest in life when I am making sure that I'm writing a little bit, I'm reading a little bit, because I find that's just as important to me. Like reading out loud into a microphone, and acting it. And God's taking care of us, man. It's been really, really crazy. So, but yeah, man, I really, really want to, dive in on this project with you on your own serial. And I find when you have people who are invested in it, not even necessarily as much as you, but they are actually invested in helping you complete the work. It's so encouraging. And that's what I want the Brood to be. I want things to be completed because we work together, So please let me help you.
Okay. I will try to be more open to that. I mean, that is definitely something I have kind of struggled with for a lot of my writing.
It's yours. You're in charge. You be as picky as you want with everything I do, and I'm just happy to help you in any way I can. So
I really appreciate that. Just despite being a child of the internet age, I've always had this kind of lurking feeling that like internet people aren't real in some sense.
Right.
And I think it helped a lot when I was younger, because it helped keep me from really falling down the broken internet rabbit holes and never coming back. If on some level you're thinking like these people are crazy, this is not real life, you're gonna come back eventually. But also it means that for things like the Brood, I'm not always like as involved as some others are. I kind of stick in there and I drop in the jokes or whatever. But
that's another reason Poets at War is a great thing. We're able to actually talk in a more human way.
I see you here. It's much better this way. So I will definitely be showing the Brood and hopefully others the web serial. I have currently written the what I'm calling the pilot episode, which is a novella about 100 pages long or so. And then I have about 5 more episodes planned for the first season, and we will go from there.
That's fantastic, man. I'm excited about that.
Yeah. And so who knows how long that will take? That might take months to write and put out there. But
well, I'm along for the ride, man. I'm in your corner, and I have been for a long time. It's so funny. We disagree on a few theological things, and we've been in some conversations, but we've also been on the same side of those kind of conversations. And just through that, I've developed a real respect for you, and respect for you also being sort of a fangs are ugly kind of person, just pointing out the obvious and the ridiculous. And because of that, and because of a friend of mine, I actually led a friend to Christ. We don't talk as much anymore because he's got his life, I've got mine. But I met him back at 16, 17 years old through a pro wrestling forum. And we got excited about a role-playing game that we were doing on the forum with everybody there. And we were waiting for it to start. And we were so excited. We just started freestyle role-playing each other's, our characters. And no joke, 5-6 years later, we've spent hours and hours a day on IM. It was AIM actually at the time, just creating these whole worlds, not just around our wrestling characters, but other characters and things. And it really helped shape me. And that's another place that I got a lot of my writing in. But he ended up leading him to Christ after his father and mother passed away almost months from each other. And it was rough, man. But he and I, he's not as creative as I am in that regard, but he's one of those guys. And that really taught me that there is another person on the other end. And not only are they potentially a predator, but they're also potentially a person who needs you specifically to help save their existence. And so, right. Yeah, exactly. It's a lot of pressure. So you got a lot of pressure in both directions. And because of that, we have a similar thing with the whole things are ugly, pointing out the ridiculous.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I just loaded us down with this concept. But the fact is, it could also just be a person who's just, some crazy conspiracy actually white supremacist person, who you absolutely want nothing to do with, whatever. Like it could be anything. And so I think that's the thing that gets me so excited going into places like Facebook, going into, anywhere, going into Gab for that matter, and like finding people who maybe even only ever were read Narnia as a kid, but they always knew there was something there. And I can say, further up and further in, my friend. Come along. I'm wearing Doctor Who shirt right here.
Nice.
Right. And so to me, I'm the doctor for these people. Come with me. And so that's really my mission, is to develop these relationships. I don't know what it's for. I don't know where it's going, but this is what has sustained my family, quite frankly, even through ways that you know about directly. And God is pleased with it. So I'm going to keep doing it. But yeah. So is there anything besides, or basically, is there anything you want to plug? Your page on Facebook, even, if people want to become your friend, whatever, like anything you want to plug.
Anything I want to plug. Ooh, this is wide open.
Yep.
I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to tell a brief story for a minute here.
Sure.
All right. So many years ago, there was a wicked magician who kidnapped 2,000 people and set them to work as slaves on his private island building his tower. And he cast a spell on all of them so that no one could leave the island unless he could whisper to the colossus in the harp the color of his own eyes. And if anyone whispered the correct color of his eyes to the colossus, he would go free. But if he whispered wrongly, the colossus would awake and devour him. And the magician's spell made everyone who knew their own eyes forget it, and anyone who tried to speak to another wouldn't make any sound. And he carefully hid all the mirrors and all the reflecting surfaces on the island so that no one could discover their own eye color and escape. Now, it so happens that the people that he took were one of two eye colors, blue or brown. And one of the people the wicked magician had kidnapped was the daughter of the king of that land. And she understood magic a little bit better than most people. And remembering her lesson, she realized that one day the magician's spell would weaken just briefly at noon on the longest day of the year. So for a brief period of that time, she wouldn't be bound to silence. She'd be able to speak to her fellow captives just for a moment. But what could she say that would help them escape? What could she say with only those few seconds? So the day comes, and at midday, when all the slaves have been gathered in the pavilions to be fed, the princess calls out in a loud voice that everyone can hear, "I see someone with blue eyes." And of course, the magician is very angry that his spell had been broken just for a moment, but he laughed because he said, "Oh, this doesn't mean anything. Nothing's going to come of that." So he did nothing. And then time passed, and then first 100 days passed, and 200 and 300, and then 999 days passed. And then on the 1,000th night, after the princess spoke, every single one of those blue-eyed captives went to the Colossus and told their eye color and were set free. And the next night, all the brown-eyed captives told that their eye color were set free. And everyone was escaped, and the magician's plan was foiled. But how'd that happen? Well, what happened was all the captives were gathered together, and they all heard the princess speak. Each of them knew the color of the eyes of everyone else, but not their own. And they couldn't tell anyone else the color of their eyes. But each thought to themselves, suppose I was the only blue-eyed person on this island. Then my fellow captives would have only brown eyes, and I would see no blue eyes. So I would know that the blue eyes the princess saw were mine. But suppose I saw only one blue-eyed person, then they might be the one the princess saw. But that person would know the color of my eyes. So if my eyes were brown, they would escape at once. But if my eyes were blue, they would not know if theirs were blue or not. But if my eyes were blue and I did not try to escape on the first night, that would mean I did not know if my eyes were blue or not. Thus, the other blue-eyed person could be assured that his eyes were blue, and we would each meet each other on the call on the second night. And then they thought to themselves, suppose I saw two blue-eyed people on the island. If they were the only two of the blue-eyed people on the island, then just as I proved, both could meet at the Colossus on the second night. And if I watched the Colossus the second night and no one came, it would mean there was a third blue-eyed person who could only be me. And by this reasoning, I can say that the same would be true if I saw 4 blue-eyed captives or 5 or any other number. So each counted among his fellow slaves, and each counted either 999 pairs of blue eyes or 1,000. And so on that 1,000th night, all the captives with blue eyes freed themselves. And the rest, knowing that their eyes must be brown, freed themselves the night after. And that's the story of how the princess saved both herself and her people and went home with praise and acclaim. And eventually she became a wise and accomplished queen. But you might be thinking to yourself, this is absurd. For the princess said nothing that was not already known to everybody. And I'll tell you this, yes, and that's what made it powerful. For no statement is ever more powerful than that which everyone already knows and is kept from saying by force.
Very nice. Love it. Love it, my friend. Thank you so much. That's wonderful. That's a wonderful teaser for the type, even though, of course, you may have a different sort of voice, the quality and the type of writing that you do. And I remember that from some of the other stuff that I've read from you when I was a beta reader. So be on the lookout, guys, because it's coming. Our serial is coming, and Michael Bush's amazing serial is coming. And like I said, keep an eye out for Darth Tater over here doing his thing. Everyone, remember, do not turn to the right or to the left to be your family's bard, and the Lord will be with you wherever you go. Join us next time in the trenches for Poets at War.
God of song, said the warrior bard, though all the world betray thee, one sword at least thy right shall guard, one faithful harp shall pray.